We're going to take a short trip through the history of standards-based instruction in adult education in Illinois. The Workforce Investment Act of 1998, a federal program that created the structure and accountability for adult education programs, was signed into law. This law specifically affected those serving the needs of adult learners by requiring a cooperative and collaborative working relationship. Institutions of higher education, local educational agencies, nonprofit organizations, and other organizations or agencies must partner for service delivery. There must be demonstrated improvements in literacy skills in reading, writing, and speaking the English language, numeracy, problem solving, English language acquisition, and other literacy skills. In addition, placement, retention, or completion of post-secondary education, training, or unsubsidized employment or career advancement were the focus of the law. The administration of adult education in Illinois, which had originally been under the helm of the Illinois State Board of Education, or ISB, was shifted to the Illinois Community College Board, ICCB, in 2001, where it remains today. Adult education's move to ICCB came just in time for a new version of the GED test in 2002. This was the first update to the GED test since 1988. Also, the writing component was added to the test for the first time. Not a lot changed in the way adult education was done in Illinois from 2002 to 2009, but since then, things have been moving at a rapid pace to embrace the changes happening in the field. Illinois was one of the first states to see what was beyond the horizon, and that is due to Jennifer Foster, Senior Director for Adult Education and Family Literacy and State Director for GED Testing Administration. In November 2009, the adoption of a strategic plan with the catchy title of Creating Pathways for Adult Learners, a visioning document for the Illinois Adult Education and Family Literacy Program, continuing our work to meet adult learners' needs, was announced. With this document, referred to by ICCB leadership as an urgent call to action, Illinois was poised to become a leader in the field of adult education. Since this is a foundational document for adult education in the state, let's look a little more closely at some of the content that has directed our efforts as a state for the last several years. This strategic plan committee determined 7 guiding principles, and the first one is responsiveness. We recognize that we must equip our students with the knowledge and skills that post-secondary education and a rapidly changing workforce require. We maintain flexibility to ensure that the needs of all learners, work-related and non-work-related, are addressed. We will balance the need to respond to the growing immigrant population with the needs of other learners to ensure that all Illinoisans have an opportunity for success. The next guiding principle is collaboration. We must engage a range of partners in offering services for adult learners that support and move them along clear and accessible pathways toward their goals. The next guiding principle is innovation. We must employ creative, innovative thinking and approaches in program delivery that builds meaningful pathways for adult learners. We must examine trends and projections to anticipate emerging workforce needs and take strategic action to address those needs now. The next guiding principle is alignment. We must align assessment, curriculum, and instruction to pathway options, ensuring that learners have multiple entry and exit points that build upon each other. Pathway exit points must be aligned to various employment opportunities and matched to expected salary levels. We must develop agreements and standardized pathways to ensure learning efforts will be recognized across various institutions. The fifth guiding principle is contextualization. We must develop learners' basic skills in the context of practical applications and occupational skills so they quickly grasp the relevance of learning and remain engaged in programs until they gain necessary skills and/or earn necessary credentials. The sixth guiding principle is accountability. We must promote shared responsibility for common outcomes among partners within the state's adult learning infrastructure. Data collection procedures must result in valid and reliable performance data that represent outcomes of all learners. Data must be used continuously and strategically to inform decisions, guide program improvements, and evaluate results. The seventh guiding principle is evidence-based teaching and learning. We must integrate innovative teaching methodologies based on research and professional wisdom which focus on learner achievement, higher-level critical thinking skills, and workplace skills critical to productive employment. And finally, the last guiding principle is professional development. Central to the effective implementation of career pathway systems is high-quality staff equipped with the skills, knowledge, and support to perform their job responsibilities. All adult education practitioners must have an understanding of their role within the career pathway system and have the requisite skills to perform that role. Instructors involved in specialized areas should have appropriate training and support to ensure quality teaching and learning. And now, let's look closely at the recommendations made by the Strategic Planning Task Force members that helped shape the vision of adult education and give us guidance for future growth. The first recommendation is assessment, curricula, and instruction. Looking at this recommendation helps frame the work we have been doing with regard to our Illinois ABE ASE content standards and the curriculum that will come from those standards. Recommendation number 2 is support and follow-up services to encourage access and retention. And it deals with helping our students remain engaged in class and succeed. We provide supportive services and teach students how to advocate for what they need themselves. We also provide a structure and the support necessary to accommodate work schedules and other responsibilities of adult education learners, including transportation, child care, and family literacy services. The third recommendation is high-quality teaching and professional development. One of the first things we realized with the adoption of the Illinois ABE ASE content standards, which were aligned to research-based standards, was that good enough was no longer acceptable. With increased rigor and complexity in the content of what our students would be required to know and use, we had to examine our professional development offerings. We increased what we were doing in terms of getting teachers and administrators familiar with the ABE ASE content standards and began examining and providing professional development on methods and strategies to get those standards out of the binders and into the adult education classrooms around the state. Recommendation number 4 is partnerships. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? It should. It's also one of the guiding principles. This recommendation emphasizes building relationships with entities such as post-secondary and job training providers, public education, economic development agencies, social service agencies, employers, community-based organizations, local governmental agency, and other relevant stakeholders. The fifth recommendation is research, data, and accountability. To ensure an effective, accountable-based outcomes, We must consistently use data in making policy, procedural, and funding decisions. The last recommendation is program design. Our students should be able to access services that match their needs regardless of their educational functioning levels. When developing program service, we must create distinct educational plans of study that adult education learners can follow from adult education to post-secondary education or job training to the workplace. We must create smooth transitions in the educational pipeline. We must empower adult education learners through information and experiences they need to make informed educational and career choices. And we must assist counselors and advisors, teachers, and adult education learners in designing individual plans of study. The Common Core State Standards, or CCSS, were adopted by the Illinois State Board of Education in June 2010. Every public school in the state was going to be expected to integrate the CCSS into their instruction by a predetermined date. Some school districts were ready because they had seen the writing on the wall and knew they must adapt. So how does the adoption of the Common Core State Standards by ISB impact the standards work done at ICCB? The initial version of the Illinois ABE-ASE Content Standards for Adult Education was first released in the spring of 2011. In the fall of that same year, a crosswalk was conducted between the Illinois Adult Education Standards and the Common Core State Standards because those were the benchmarks for elementary and secondary education in the state of Illinois at the time. It was concluded from the crosswalk that the Illinois Adult Education Standards did not meet instructional levels necessary for high school equivalency. ICCB directed that the revision of the Illinois ABE-ASE Content Standards include the following, and some of these are long. The Common Core State Standards, the state's Career Cluster Initiative Essential Knowledge and Skills Statements, and technology standards from the International Society for Technology in Education's National Educational Technology Standards for Students. The revised Illinois ABE-ASE Content Standards were released to the field in June of 2012. Beginning in late summer of 2012, the Central Service Center staff conducted 2-day face-to-face trainings throughout the state titled Standards to Strategies. Those trainings were created to encourage adult education instructors to become familiar with the standards and examine how they should shape their instructional strategies and content based on the new Illinois ABE-ASE Content Standards. The Standards to Strategies trainings continued into 2013, and in addition, a new version of the GED test was on the horizon. We knew that the new version would be a computer-based test and would replace the 2002 series paper-based test. In addition, the new version would be more rigorous and more accurately assess a student's readiness for the requirements of post-secondary education and employment. The importance of college and career readiness for adult students cannot be overstated. The integration of the CCR standards into adult education programs is intended to provide those students with the opportunity to be prepared for post-secondary training without the need for remediation. To that end, OCTAE selected specific standards from the Common Core State Standards in order to reach students at their instructional levels upon program entry and positioning them for successful progress toward college and career readiness. After the release of the College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education in April of 2013, the Illinois ABE-ASE Content Standards were re-examined. Because the content standards were already aligned with the Common Core state standards, very few revisions were necessary. Updates were made to the reference column to highlight the CCR standards that had been identified by OCTAE. It is very important to note that no new standards were added to the Illinois ABE-ASE content standards during this reexamination. And here we are, early in 2014, in January 2nd to be exact, a new computer-based version of the test was released, updating the 2002 GED test series. At the same time, teams were formed to develop a curriculum guide for both language arts and mathematics, and for ABE and ASE levels in each of those subjects. These guides grouped essential understandings and questions for each domain by NRS level. In April and May, Illinois was represented as one of several states that participated in the first phase of OCTAE's College and Career Readiness Implementation Institutes. During this time, a gap analysis of the June 2012 version of the Illinois ABE-ASE content standards was completed by federal representatives. The gap analysis examined the degree of alignment between the Illinois ABE-ASE content standards and key advances in the CCR standards for adult education. The gap analysis concluded that the standards, as they are presently composed, have many strengths, particularly the organization and structure of the standards document. And we're not done with 2014. It was a very busy year. ABE and ASE curriculum institutes were held regionally across the state of Illinois. Both the curriculum guides for language arts and mathematics, plus the revised ABE-ASE content standards, were distributed to programs that attended the curriculum institutes, and this was also the beginning of the curriculum development project for the state of Illinois. In July 2014, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, or WIOA, was signed into law, and this will take effect on July 1, 2016. This is the legislation that makes adult education possible. WIOA is the update and replacement for the Workplace Investment Act of 1998. The funds flow through the Department of Education to OCTAE and then ultimately to the states and programs. Without WIOA, we would not be able to serve our students. The emphasis of WIOA is strengthening relationships with our core partners and other adult education stakeholders. There is a big accountability feature to WIOA that may not have been as evident with prior versions of the legislation. The new legislation applies one set of accountability metrics to every federal workforce program under the bill. It requires that states create a unified plan for all mandated partners, and it better aligns workforce areas, labor markets, and economic development regions. Finally, the new law strengthens data reporting. Standards to Strategies was originally a 2-day face-to-face training in 2012. And this training morphed into a hybrid training during 2013. It eventually has gone completely online now as an iLearn self-paced course since September of 2014. During the fall of 2014, Illinois applied for OCTAE's College and Career Readiness Standards in Action project. This was a national initiative designed to support states' efforts to implement and sustain college and career readiness standards. Illinois was one of 12 states chosen to participate. During 2015, the curriculum development project continued for ABE and ASE programs. Also, the state team participating in the College and Career Readiness Standards in Action project traveled to Washington, D.C. for trainings in March and September. Elgin Community College and Lincoln Land Community College were chosen as pilot participants, and a 5-year sustainability plan was developed as part of the federal project. And now, you're up to date on the things happening in adult education in Illinois. I hope this little history lesson was helpful. Thanks.